Hridayananda Das Goswami. Um, Maharaj, where are you? Look, are you in California right now?
I am in California, yes.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So we're all in Tulsa except for Emily Mataji. She's in New York City. So for those that do not know, Hridayananda Das Goswami, um, he is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He was introduced to Krishna consciousness back in 1969, and he became initiated in 1970, and make sure I get all these dates right. And Maharaj has his doctorates in Sanskrit study, as well as Indian study, I do believe. And outside of being a Sanskrit scholar, Maharaj is also a linguist. Has 7 languages under his belt. And I'm pretty sure there's more languages that you're probably gonna you already know in next. But we just want to thank you so much for spending your time and your energy here. And we just started last week. The Hopefully everybody can see this. The comprehensive guide to the Bhagavad Gita, which Maharaj just recently published, and I must say that this is one of the best um, study guides I could ever imagine. And so we are starting on. I second that. And we're starting on chapter 3, the modes of material nature. And if there's anything that you want me to add, please let me know. But besides that, I will give you the floor and the room to share um, your knowledge. Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, and it's nice to see all of you. And I guess we're ready for takeoff. So, I was asked to go over chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita, which has a few main topics. It really, the first maybe 2/3 of the Gita, of the chapter, talks a lot about what is called karma, and translated as action. The word karma in Sanskrit has become well known around the world in the sense of the laws of karma or the system of karma, where whatever you do, good or bad, comes back to you. And these reactions ultimately take shape as another body, reincarnation. And so karma really, in that sense, posits a universal moral law, so that everything we do, we receive an equal, an equitable, appropriate response for it. And not only the law of karma states that not only do we get punishments and rewards according to the moral quality of our actions, but also there's a type of neutral reaction where, for example, let's say someone really likes to play music, and so they dedicate themselves. So in their next life, they may be, quote unquote, a born musician. In fact, Prabhupada even made some remark that the Beatles, whom he had association with in their past life, that performed some kinds of piety. And so, anyway, that's all karma. But that's not what Krishna means here. Krishna's talking about something else. The word karma comes from a Sanskrit root, kur, which just means to do. And so karma in this sense simply means action, and not necessarily material action. For example, in chapter 4, Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam, evam joveti tattva. Anyone who truly understands my birth and action, karma. So karma can be a completely neutral, can have a completely neutral sense, just action, any action, your action, God's action, material action, spiritual action. And that's but it has another sense. These are all ways in which the word karma is used. Another sense in which it's used, which probably gets closest to what Krishna is doing in chapter 3 here. The word karma also means, in a sense, your duty or your vocation, your career, like what you do in life. It's like, I mean, even in English, we could say to somebody, yeah, what do you do? And the person could say, well, I'm breathing right now and I'm about to have lunch. But that's not what we mean. When we say, what do you do? We mean, what's your career? And karma kind of has that sense also. So let's get into it. And of course, the reason this whole topic comes up at all is that Arjuna is persisting with his excuses why he should leave the battlefield. And so Arjuna begins this chapter, and so therefore Krishna has to explain the nature of action, spiritual action, material action, good and bad, because Arjuna is specifically tripping on that point. He thinks he should leave the battlefield. He doesn't. So Arjuna begins this chapter by saying, Jayasi chet karmanas te matavudhir Janardana. I'm going to give you a very, very literal translation here. So Arjuna says, oh, Janardana, budhir, which means intelligence, or in other words, rather than going out in the world and fighting or making money, you just kind of, it's the life of the mind. So Krishna here tells Arjuna says, Janardana, Krishna, you have considered, or you have said that you consider buddhi, this higher intelligence, to be better. Jayasi just means better than karma. And of course, Arjuna here is referring in the relevant sense to his karma, his duty, which is to get into this battle and kill a lot of bad guys who happen to be related to him. So Arjuna is saying that, well, Krishna, I'm not really going to go out there and fight and kill all those people because you said that buddhi's better. So I think I'm just going to get into my buddhi. I'm just going to get into my, my higher consciousness and all that. And so Arjuna says he thinks he's sort of caught Krishna in a contradiction, like you're contradicting yourself. So he says, you said you consider, Krishna, that buddhi is better than karma. So therefore, king, why karmani gore mang niyojasi Kesava? Oh, Kesava, why are you engaging me in horrible karma? If in general, higher consciousness is better than karma, why then are you engaging me in terrible karma? Not only karma, it's not even like so karma. You're actually engaging me in this really awful karma. And then Arjuna says, Vyami Sreneva Vakyena, by this sort of literally mixed up instruction. I mean, that's really what Arjuna is saying. Mishra means mixed. So Vyami Sreneva, by this, and Vyami, it really means like, if you know Sanskrit, it really sounds like by this totally mixed up instruction. Vyami Sreneva Vakyena buddhi mohyasiva me. You are bewildering my buddhi. So he's saying, hey, Krishna, you said buddhi's better than karma, but you're engaging me in the worst possible karma and you're confusing my buddhi. So in other words, there's something seriously wrong with this picture. So then Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, then the Lord said, Lokesmin Dividhanishta Pura Prokta Mayanaga. Krishna says, I already told you, Pura Prokta. Pura means before, already. Prokta was explained by me. I already told you, Arjuna, that Lokesmin, in this world, and by the way, the word loka, we still have in English. That word loka by way of Latin. So the word, for example, locus, like the position of something, the locus, or location, that's Sanskrit loka. I sometimes say that in ancient Vedic culture, real estate agents said ancient Vedic real estate agent said the most important things are loka, loka, loka. That's actually where we get the English word location. Anyway, so Krishna says, I already told you, Arjuna, that in this world there are two kinds of nishtha. And that's an interesting word. Nishtha can mean status, standing, or position, or it can mean like a process that you're engaged in. And of course, Krishna is referring to verse 239, where Krishna said to Arjuna that what I've explained to you, actually, I'll get 239. I've got I can just turn to it. He said, Esha te pita sanke. So chapter 2 of the Bhagavad-Gita is titled, Prabhupada gave the title, which he probably was translating from some traditional title given to it, Contents of the Gita Summarized. So it's a very long chapter. I think it has 72 verses. So sort of in the middle, sort of in the middle of the chapter, Krishna says, and this is right after Krishna has explained how you're not your body, the soul is eternal, the body is temporary. Eternal things never stop existing. Temporary things never go on existing. And the soul cannot be killed, and so on. So after really hammering home this simple ontology, there are eternal things and there are temporary things. So after Krishna explains that, he says, okay, what I just explained to you is buddhi, higher understanding, but sankhya in a philosophical sense. And then he says, yoge tu imang shanu, now hear about buddhi, higher consciousness, in practice. And the word in practice here is yoge, in yoga, which here means practice. And then Krishna says, buddhya yukto yaya partha, so that when you really are connected, literally, when you're really connected to this higher understanding, this spiritual reason, rationality, karma bandhang prahasyasi, you will simply give up your karma bondage. So that's 239. And that's what Krishna's referring to when he says here at the beginning of chapter 3 that I already explained to you that the spiritual path is twofold. Jnana yogena sankhyanam. For philosophers, for people who are philosophical, there's jnana yoga, where you connect yourself to God by cultivating knowledge, and then karma yogena yogina. And yogi here doesn't mean someone with super Vedic dreads, meditating on a mountaintop. Yogi here means someone who is active in the world, someone who's acting, not just, so it's almost like the opposite of what you may think it means here. So Krishna, again, in chapter 2, he described it as buddhi. Here he calls it jnana yoga. So he's making this sort of implicit linking equation that when I say buddhi or higher intelligence, spiritual reason, I'm talking about the spiritual practice of knowledge, of understanding. And so there's the philosopher's path, there's the active person's path, people who are out and about in the world. And so Krishna's kind of, okay, let's do this again, Arjuna. I already explained it to you. You missed it. You didn't get it. So let's do it again. And then Krishna says, the karma nama narambhan. It's not that by not undertaking actions in the world, naishkarmyam purushoshnuté, that you achieve naishkarmya. Krishna is sort of playing on words here. So if you understand Sanskrit, you see what he's doing. Because the word nishkarma, nish means without. It's a Sanskrit prefix, which can also sometimes written as nir, N-I-R, like nirvana, which means without vana. And so nishkarma means karmaless, like a karmaless state, and in the sense of having reactions. So Krishna's kind of playing with these different meanings of the word karma. So he says, Purushashrute, a person does not achieve the liberated state of naishkarmya, the state beyond karma. A person does not achieve that liberated state simply by not undertaking actions. In other words, you don't become free of work in this world by not working. So so what Krishna is doing here, he's exposing Arjun's, you could say, somewhat simplistic argument. And so Krishna is saying you can't become free of karma just by not doing karma. He's going to explain why that's true. And he says also, nacha sanyasanat eva, and you cannot sitting samadhi gachati, and you cannot achieve full perfection simply by sannyasa, by renouncing. That's kind of discouraging for me because I thought I could just take sannyasa, and in addition to getting free lunch for the rest of my life, I could anyway. So Krishna is saying that, in other words, the essence of what Krishna is saying here is that you can't really achieve perfection. You can't achieve liberation just by not doing things. It's not just you take away certain things and then you're perfect. No, you have to do things in the world. And then Krishna explains why that's true. In verse 3.5, he says, Nahi kaschit kshanamapi. No one, even for a moment, jatu tishtati akarmakrit, can ever remain without doing something. Why? Why can't you, even for a moment? No one, even for a moment, can ever go on a karma krit, not doing some action. Why? Because karyate hiyavashak karma, sarva prakriti jayar gunai. Because everyone, sarva, karyate, is forced to do something. Everyone is forced to do something. Prakriti jayar gunai, by the modes, those pesky modes of nature, by the gunas which are born of Prakriti. Now, what does that mean? For example, vows such as, I'm going to eat very little from now on, as we know, are made to be broken. And usually such vows last, maybe, if they last an entire meal cycle, that's really unusual. So, for example, let's say that, you just vowed you're not going to eat sweets, and then you go somewhere and they're serving some vegan version of lemon meringue pie, and game over. Or, but what is that? What is a nice vegan lemon meringue? Oh my God, I'm going to get myself distracted here. What is that really? It's actually, it's the modes of nature, the flavors, the particular flavor you like, or, whatever you like, something you really like. It's just a particular guna. Or you meet someone, someone sometimes makes a vow like, I'm going to be single for the rest of my life. And they meet someone and, their vow flies away. So what does it mean? Because when you meet different people, they are also in different modes of nature. Like, I like this person's personality, or this person is cute, or, God knows what that means. So all these things, like one person's cute is another person's hideous. So, so when you become attracted to a person, to a food, when you think, oh, I'd really like to live in this place, or just, and not only likes and dislikes, but like, I have to do something, like, I really want to go there today. I have to get out of the city, or I have to go to the city, or I have to earn some money, or I've got to start working less, or I've got to save more money, or, anything, just anything that you feel, I have to do this. Like, my child is crying, I've got to feed my child. Or it's just like anything that you feel you have to do means that the modes are pushing you. And the modes are pushing you through your body. because the gunas are material and they impact your body, so that, and meanwhile, it bubbles up to your mind. For those who have minds, it bubbles up to your mind, and you think, I have to do this. So whenever you think, I have to do this, or I want to do this, or I need to do this, whatever it may be, usually we're being pushed by the modes of nature. Now, if you say, I want to serve Krishna, I want to serve Krishna, that's a spiritual desire. But even then, how are you going to serve Krishna? For example, theoretically, one could serve Krishna by doing a ballet on a high wire in a circus, which is I plan to do actually starting next year. I'm kind of booked for this year. Just kidding. But let's say you want to do something. Let's say you want to do something for Krishna. So even then, what you want to do is because of your nature. I mean, there's certain things we can all do and certain things we can't do. So even when we are choosing, of course, when you're a new devotee, they just say, wash these pots or do this or do that. You just become a Vedic gopher. But once you get out of your Vedic gopher stage, and you actually have to choose, what you want to do in life for Krishna, then you're going to choose something which is according to your nature, and that nature is formed by the modes of nature. So we have to do things, even if we're doing it for Krishna, or if we're doing it, not for Krishna, which is not a great idea, but still the mode. So therefore, you can't just do nothing, because as we know, even if you say, okay, I'm just going to sit here, I'm not going to do anything, but that's a great effort, because it's unnatural just to sit down and not get up again. That's actually unnatural. And therefore, just to sit somewhere is a great effort, which means you are doing something. So at every moment, we're doing something. That's what Krishna says. So the idea that a philosophical path means that I won't do things, Krishna is saying that's absurd. Because even if you're on a philosophical path, whatever your path is, you are active by nature. So then Krishna says what you really ought to do, karmendriyani sanyamya, really controlling the active senses. In Sanskrit, they have 5 what they call knowledge senses, the gyanendriyas, which are your eyes, ears, nostrils, tongue, and touch. See that? At my age, I still remember them. Oh God, I hope I don't get to the point where lists of 5, become challenges to me. Anyway, so those are the gyanendriyas. Those are the knowledge senses. Then there are the karmendriyas, the action senses, which are taken in this system to be the hands, the arms and hands, the legs, voice, the reproductive organ, and the organ behind. So those are, which has various euphemisms. So those are the 5. So Krishna here is talking about the karmendriyas, your senses. So controlling your speech, controlling what you actually do physically with your hands and legs and all that, obviously controlling sex and all that. So one who, so if a person just controls their external body, but they go on remembering with the mind, indriyarthan, the sense objects. In other words, beautiful, things that your eyes like to see, or things you want to touch, or sex desire, or so one who restrains the senses, but goes on remembering the sense objects, dreaming about the sense objects. Krishna says, Vimudhatma is really a confused soul. And Krishna calls that person Mityachara, A person whose behavior is false because the person appears to be renounced, but actually they're dreaming of, I guess, Genie with the light brown hair or something. They're dreaming of all kinds of sense gratification. So that person, Krishna says, so that's hypocrisy. So Krishna tells Arjuna, you have to act in this world. So if you just try to be inactive, but you're really thinking about these things, then it's just hypocrisy. So why even go there? And then Krishna says, this is what you should do. Yes, to indriyani manasa niyam yadhabate Arjuna. So if you restrain your senses with the mind, and then you begin karmendriyai with your action senses, you begin karma yoga, asakta, without being attached, savishishate, that is better. In other words, you have to work. You have to be active in this world. And therefore, it's better to perform karma or action as karma yoga. In other words, whatever you have to do because it's your nature, do it for Krishna. Do it for Krishna. And then you are an honest person because you're doing the things that you want to do, but you're doing them for Krishna. So it's not just karma, it's karma yoga. And then Krishna says, niyatang kuru karma twang, which means you, Arjuna, perform your prescribed duty, literally. Karma jayyo hiya karmanaha. Karma, action or duty, is better than inaction. Sharira jatrapi chate na prasidhyeda karmana. Because even bodily maintenance, just keeping body and soul together, as it said, literally it says here, cannot be accomplished. Na prasidhyeda means cannot be accomplished. Akarmana, or a person who just doesn't do anything. So that is the first section of the chapter. We didn't do the whole chapter because that would take long. So I may actually stop here and see if there are any questions, because rather than race through the whole chapter, I thought it'd be good to really to be a little more thorough and see what Krishna is really saying in the first part of the chapter. Then let's see, someone sent me a note here. Let's see, page 15, the modes bind us to this world. Goodness fosters worldly joy and wisdom, but the good person clings to these and cannot transcend temporary goodness to reach eternal life. How does one learn to identify and transcend attachment to temporary goodness? So first we'll talk about that, and then there's a follow-up question. It's Sunday, it's 2-for-1 day. We got our Sunday special all day today. So, yes, we cannot simply get tied up in material goodness, because in material goodness, you are a good person, but not necessarily a spiritual person. You may be very nice and do your duty and help other people, and all that's great, but you may not actually be strongly connecting to God. And so, and that's a problem, because actually everything is coming from Krishna. So there's the ingratitude problem. We are receiving everything from Krishna. We are part of Krishna. So if we don't recognize God, we can't really understand ourselves, for the simple reason that we're part of Krishna. So if you say, I'm an American, and someone says, well, what is America? I don't really know. I just know that I'm an American. Obviously, that's silly. So we're part of Krishna. Unless we know what Krishna is, we can't know what we are. So therefore, Krishna recommends, or you could say just describes the mode of goodness as the highest mode, of course. But the understanding is that that's not the spiritual platform. If you take that goodness and then live for Krishna, if you live a life of goodness, but you live for God, then it's spiritual. And it becomes Shuddha Sattva, purified goodness, because goodness by itself is material quality. It's when you actually offer that life of goodness to Krishna that it becomes Shuddha, becomes purified, and it becomes purely spiritual goodness. So now let's see, the second part was follow-up. If the answer is simply to break attachment to the fruits of action, wouldn't attachment to the fruits of action be considered in the mode of passion? Yes, Krishna describes actually in the Bhagavad-Gita the problem with material goodness. See if I can find that verse. Let's see. Satam. Let's see. Prakashakam Namayam. Why is Google failing me? I think Google just left the Hare Krishna movement. Okay, I found it. It's actually verse 14:6, and I'll read it to you, and it explains exactly what this question is getting at. So 14:6, Krishna says, Tatra, therein, meaning he's talking about the modes of nature. Satam, nirmalatvat, precisely because of its purity. Because there is a purity in material goodness, I mean, relative purity. Prakashakam, it's enlightening. The mode of goodness is enlightening. You can understand a lot of things in the mode of goodness. You can't understand the other modes. And anamayam, and it is relatively free. It's free of gross contamination. But therefore, sukha, here's the problem though. Sukha sangena badnati. It binds us by attachment to the happiness that it produces. Goodness, and so you find, I mean, the world is full of people who are very proud of their goodness or their virtue, and look down on other people. So sukha sangena, the mode of goodness binds us by attachment to that happiness, and jnana sangena, and it binds us by attachment to the wisdom that comes with goodness. So now clearly that attachment is passion. And so the spiritual platform is called Shuddha Sattva, because on the material platform, goodness is never in its pure form. Material goodness always has a tinge of, I'm such a nice person, or I'm really smart, or I'm wise, or whatever. So there's always some attachment, and that attachment, so there's always a little trace amount of passion, and that's why it's not spiritual. So then the last, let's see if there's more to that question. So another question on page 18, souls are given deep rest within Krishna's own nature, only to be sent forth again into this temporary world of suffering till they learn to value spiritual freedom. Please explain what you mean by deep rest within Krishna's own nature before being sent back into the karmic cycle. Well, it's explained in the Bhagavatam that there are, actually in the Gita, that there are cycles of creation and destruction of the universe as we know it. And in between these cycles, living beings go into the body of Mahavishnu, where they kind of, take a break. Like it's sort of like this super cosmic chill pill, where you go into the body of Mahavishnu. And so if you say why, I'm using the popular ways of speech, just trying to communicate with people in the 21st century. So because when we're working through karma, it's like having different births and then enjoying and suffering and another birth. I mean, you can get really tired after a while. I mean, it can be really laborious because you think, I mean, just think this life. As people get a little older in this world, they think, I'm really tired. That's like your main sensation. I'm really tired. And it's just, just tired of having to play a part for other people, tired of having to get up and work. It's just, and so when you've gone through this a few million times, you need a break. I mean, the soul kind of needs a break. That's why Krishna invented days and nights, because we need to rest. In the spiritual world, of course, it's different, but in this material world, it's very trying. It's stressful. There's pressure to do this and pressure to do that, and so after going through so many lifetimes, thank God we get a break. And so that's why there are days and nights in every 24-hour cycle. And that's why there are days and nights, as Krishna describes in the Gita. There are cosmic days and nights. And days and nights for conditioned souls, because we need it. So, unrelated to current reading, well, that's not so good. This is chapter 1 of Bhagavad-Gita. Who knows? Okay, so those things, maybe whoever asked that question perhaps could send that to me in a letter, because I think I'm going to follow Prabhupada's example and sort of stick to the topic here. But your question, whoever wrote that, you can write to me personally and I'll be happy to answer it. So, any questions from the people who are here on StreamYard or YardStream, or what is it? What do they call it? Oh, StreamYard, yes.
Hare Krishna, Acharya Dev.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much for doing this for us today.
My pleasure.
On the topic of guna and karma, I've heard different opinions on how relevant varnashram is for people practicing bhakti today. Yes. I was curious to hear your thoughts on that. How relevant is varnashram for those who are trying to act according to their qualities?
Yes. First of all, we have to separate them, because we already have ashrams. I mean, devotees should either be married or not married, not half married. And so that is something, obviously not everyone follows this, but really if you're serious about practicing bhakti yoga, you have to choose an ashram. It's a God-given system. Don't try to invent like, okay, I'm sort of like half grihastha, half brahmachari or brahmacharini. I mean, ultimately, if we want to make serious spiritual advancement, you got to choose one. So those are the ashrams. Then as far as the varnas are concerned, as I've often said, the biggest problem to establish this varna system of brahmanas, kshatriyas, vaishyas, shudras, the biggest problem was the Industrial Revolution, because the varna system is based on an agricultural economy, an agrarian economy. And if you've studied these things at all, you know that societies with agrarian economies are much simpler. They're much simpler than industrial economies. Industrialized economies, or post-industrial, or digital economies, or gig economies, whatever they're doing nowadays, it's just a big mess. And it's unnatural, which is why we've become, the planet pharmaceutics. It's because it's very stressful. It's unnatural. There's something very unnatural even about the options. We're not getting truly natural options. And so to establish the 4 varnas, like brahmanas, teachers and priests, or kshatriyas, warriors and governors, people that govern, vaishyas, commerce and agriculture, and then shudras, artisans and laborers and so on. To establish those 4 simple divisions in this age is difficult. For example, Krishna says, I'll give you a few examples. And Krishna says in the Gita that a Vaishya should do commerce, which is vanija, in Sanskrit vanijam, and then krishi, agriculture, and go raksha, krishi go raksha vanija. Go raksha means cow protection. So if you want to protect cows nowadays, you get some land. The problem is that the whole economy, the whole dairy economy is pegged to cow slaughter. So in other words, if you have cows and you don't kill them because you're a civilized human being, then you have to feed them. They need veterinarians. You have to fence the land because land has been fenced for the last several centuries, and we don't live in the old days where people, herds just graze freely over public land. And so the price of fencing, the price of veterinarian services, the price of feed, all of that assumes that when cows stop giving a lot of milk, you kill them. And so the whole economy is based on that. So obviously, if you're civilized, you don't kill cows, but they remain an expense. And so you're competing with people who kill the cows. And so it's nice to have a few Hare Krishna farms or noble grihastas that get some land and keep some cows. That's all very good. But if we're trying to do this on a more societal scale, if we're recommending this is something that society could do, then you'll go bankrupt very quickly because of the demonic economy. Or if you have a family farm, for example, and which is very nice, but let's say now there's this heavy capitalist farming where they'll buy thousands of acres and get these monster tractors. And so the reason they do that, the reason they get huge parcels of land and bring in this huge equipment is because it ends up being cheaper. It's sort of like mass production of food. And it is, but it destroys the economic basis for the family farm. So even in the production of things like grains or orchards or vegetables, so to swim against the stream economically, to sort of establish in isolation your own economy is okay if you're self-contained. If your goal is self-sufficiency, and you're really clever and hardworking and you're charismatic enough to get other people to work with you, and you're able to attract and retain useful people, then yeah, you could. I mean, I think it is possible to do something like self-sufficiency, although even then, you're not going to grow your own internet, for example. You can't plant little Apple tablet seeds. Or let's say you want to go to town for something because that's where they sell everything, things you need, even things like seeds and so on. So it's to really go off the grid. You almost have to be subsidized. You almost need money in the bank to go off the grid. And
does Prabhupada want to do that? Did Prabhupada want us to go off the grid?
He never really emphasized it. I mean, whenever Prabhupada visited our farms, he was driven there. Prabhupada never backpacked to ISKCON farms. He went there in automobiles. He'd fly into a region and they'd drive him to a farm and they would tape record his class that he gave at the farm. He never said, hey, we're on an ISKCON farm, no tape recorders. or if his secretary was, typing his correspondence, never said we're on a farm, no typewriters or no cars. So it's so I think, I mean, there are programs in the world where there are attempts to sort of do a hybrid program where you're living much more naturally, but you still have you make some concessions. Because for one thing, let's say you went off the grid and did a farm, no one in the world would ever know about it, because as far as I know, the Pony Express service has been discontinued. And so, how would anyone even know about it? Or let's say you didn't allow, how would anyone know about that you were even there? Which would kind of defeat the purpose. So it's tough. I think what we can do is, even if we're not totally off the grid, I think if we get land and we just have successful rural communities, that alone is a giant step in the right direction. And it would be a very good model, a very good example for other people. So I think, you have to start with baby steps, shishupadas. I think we have to, so I would suggest that, and even Prabhupada, if you look at the sequence, his administrative sequence, Prabhupada was able to inspire and organize very successful urban preaching programs, Hare Krishna temples, Sankirtan parties. And then the rural projects kind of grew out of that because of all this dynamic urban preaching. ISKCON had a lot of resources. There were a lot of devotees. There was a lot of money. And so some of those human and financial resources were channeled into rural projects. Anyway, I must apologize because I actually have another program with Mexico. And none of you want to get on the wrong side of ISKCON Mexico, I know. And
John,
so,
Thank you so much, Maharaj.
Good time, and hopefully we have the honor to have another class by you, and we can ask some more questions. And I'll make sure if there's any questions that are most appropriate offline, we'll get that for you.
Thank you. It's really great to see all of you. It was a lot of fun. Talk about Krishna, and we'll see you again soon. I'm off to old Mexico. They're actually having a Rath Yatra in Mexico City.
Wow.
And so I'm going to put on my Vedic sombrero and so thank you very much.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.